Hey guys, Healthy Average Racer here. I'm just going to do a little video on getting ready for our first league race. Or maybe you've done a few races and you're just getting a bit flustered or things haven't quite gone how you'd like. I'm just going to run through a few little tips and tricks to make your night go a little bit smoother and get a little bit more enjoyment out of your league racing. So the first thing to do to get the best online experience is to join an organised league. I'll link a few of the ones that I race in here in Australia in the description below for games like Automobilista 2, R Factor 2, Assetto Corsa Competizione. It's the best way to get the best quality racing against the best people. And if things go wrong, there are administrators and moderators there who can impose penalties or have a chat to people who aren't quite doing the right thing. As opposed to your online public lobbies, which are an absolute mess. There's no rules or structure to them. There's no help available either if you do get stuck. So definitely the best thing to do is to get onto an organised league and start from there. The leagues are really good at helping the new guys out. If you ask any questions, the experienced guys will definitely give you an answer. I've never come across anybody in the leagues that I run in who don't want to help the new guys. So if you have any questions, definitely fire away. The guys have lots and lots of experience and some really fast guys. And when you first start, you'll probably think those times are way out of your league, but as you go along, those times won't feel so alien and you'll get more and more competitive. So definitely find a league. You might have to play around with a few and see what works for you and what doesn't. I've certainly made my way through a few different leagues over the years and left some and stayed with some until I've got to a point now where I'm really happy with the people who I interact with online. So now we've found the league that we want to join and we're part of the Discord community. The next thing to do is to practice. And that sounds really obvious, but practice makes perfect. So in the lead up to the race, most leagues will run a practice server, which will replicate the conditions that you'll find on the night or as close as possible to it. So it's really important to jump onto that server during the week, get yourself familiar with the car on the track. It's also a great time to jump into the voice chat and have a chat to the other members who are on at the same time as you are. Introduce yourself to them so they get to know you and you get to know them. So that come race night, you're sort of already part of that family. While we're in the practice server, we're going to really take notice of things like our tyre wear rates and our fuel usage. These numbers become really important later in the week when we're trying to work out our pit strategy, which you want to have done before the race begins, because you don't want to be doing that stuff on the fly while you're trying to keep somebody behind you or just keep the car on track. We want to have all our numbers and figures ready to go so we can just concentrate on the actual racing. So on our first few races, if there is a pit stop, we're going to probably want to stop at around the halfway mark just to make the race 2 even halves. We're not trying to win the race, we're just trying to finish in one piece and get through the night. We can play around with our strategy later, but initially just aim for the middle part of the race, make a compulsory stop if there is one, and then get to the end of the race. Also know where the pit lane entry is. That's part of your practice routine as well. A lot of circuits like Paul Ricard or Zandvoort have really unusual pit lane entries. Some entries at some circuits are a long way into the pit lane. Some of them are right at the very start. So you don't want to get to race night, go for your first pit stop, and have absolutely no idea where the pit lane line is. And then you inevitably get a speeding drive-through because you don't know where you're going. So again, get all that sort of stuff worked out in the practice sessions before the race starts, so you're not fumbling around on race night and copping penalties and making your night worse. So we talked about getting all our numbers on fuel usage and tyre wear before. Make sure we get our pit strategy done before the race starts, and you can save these in all the major games, Assetto Corsa, AMS2, R Factor. You can save a pit strategy so you can work out how many litres you're going to put in, what tyres you're going to change, how many stops you're going to do. So all that stuff can then be mapped to your in-car management button as you're driving around, and it's just a matter of selecting that preset pit stop when it's time to pit. So again, you're not fumbling around with buttons while you're trying to drive the car and keep somebody behind you. Makes life a lot easier. So in terms of your fuel, again, work off your average lap pace. Have a look at how many minutes the race is for. do some very simple maths on how many laps that you're going to do, and then look at your average fuel use. I always go obviously a little bit more conservative. See if I'm using 3 litres per lap indicated while I'm driving around. I might work out the fuel for 3.2 just in case I end up using more fuel for some reason. It's always better to have more fuel in the car than less. Get all your buttons mapped on your wheel as well before the race starts, so make sure you've got, if the car has them, headlights and wipers in case the weather turns for the worse. Make sure you have your in-car management or pit strategy button mapped to a button. Make sure you have a engine ignition button mapped, because some leagues don't allow you to have auto ignitions. Make sure your pit limiter is mapped to a button that's fairly close to your thumb usually. And any other buttons you might need, like a pit request button, your brake biases, all that sort of stuff. Make sure everything you're going to need on the night is mapped correctly. It's nothing worse than getting into a race and you haven't mapped a certain button, especially for things like the ignition, if you spin for example, and you can't restart the car. So really crucial to get your buttons totally set up. Do some practice offline AI races using those buttons to make sure everything is how you want it set up. Try and get a gauge as well on your average race pace. We all sit there and look at the outright pace and our best lap time, but remember that is when things have gone absolutely perfectly and we're at our absolute peak. Generally our race pace is 1 to 2 seconds below that, and that's what we're going to run for a 20, 30, 40, 90 minute race. Is going to be our average pace. From that average pace, we're also going to work out our fuel usage. So it's important to work off our average pace, not our maximum pace, because it's very rare we're going to go through a whole race at our maximum speed. This also sounds obvious, but make sure you're aware of all the details of your race. How long the race is, what other rules are there in terms of compulsory pit stops. If there is a compulsory stop, is it for just tyres or just fuel or both? Is there a choice? Or maybe there's no stop at all if it's a shorter race. And practice our race starts. Obviously, various games and cars will have different race starts. In ACC, for example, it's always a rolling start. There's a procedure to that, so make sure you do some offline AI racing to familiarise yourself with how it works, getting into the right position so you don't get a penalty. When the light's about to go green, you have to hold a certain speed. So again, do all that through an AI race so you're aware of how it works in real life. Games like R Factor 2, for example, where I drive a V8 supercar, they're a standing start with a clutch, so it's a sequential gearbox. Make sure you are practicing that start routine. If you need to use a clutch, work out where your bite point is. Just do some practice starts so you're not, again, on the night panicking about the start. You're still going to be nervous about the start, but at least you've had a good practice beforehand so you know what to expect, and hopefully it goes as best as it possibly can. So communication is a big thing during the race. When you're part of an organised league, you'll generally be in a Discord chat or something similar. So it's making sure that during the race we're communicating with the other drivers, especially if you're a slower car or back marker or there's blue flags involved, or you have a problem with your car. Make sure that's communicated to the other drivers. For me, if I'm coming up to a back marker, I'll generally communicate as to where I want them to go in the corner coming up. I can see their name on the screen, so I'll simply say, Gary, up in the next corner, I'm going to go on the right hand side, and hopefully he can then stay left. As much communication as possible will avoid any incidents and stop people getting angry at you or you angry at them. Try as much as possible to stick to the original strategy that you picked. Obviously, once the race starts, you can get punted at turn 1, you can make a mistake yourself because you're nervous, but as much as possible, try and stick to your original race plan. If it was a 45-minute race, for example, and you're going to pit after 22 or 23 minutes, try and stick to that. Even if you get spun or you make a mistake, unless the car is undrivable, just try and stick it out. So once we're away and we're into the race, obviously our main goal is to stay out of trouble. So make sure we're using our in-game radar if it has one, so you know who's around you, and utilising things like Crew Chief, which is a separate app which is really good at spotting. So it'll let you know where the cars are. It'll say, you know, car on your left, still there, you're clear. Also will help you with your pit strategies as well, let you know how much fuel you've got left, when you pit, where you're going to come out into that traffic. If there's a leader behind you, give you gaps forward and behind. So Crew Chief's a really, really good app to make sure you're running, compatible with all the major sims. It's been around for a long while. Lots of feedback, lots of detail in there for you, so make sure you're utilising that in conjunction with our on-screen radar.
That was great racing, boys.
And then hopefully after all that, you've finished your first race and it's happy days. You got through a long piece, you haven't crashed into anybody, you haven't made too many mistakes, but you've had a good night. Make sure you thank the other guys for the race, especially if you had some good close battles with somebody. I always just say thanks for the good battle. You didn't run each other off the road, which is always great. And then look forward to your next race. Thanks guys, hope that helped a little bit. Hopefully Average Racer signing off.
Give you a heart attack there, Cow.